Hello and welcome to the What's for Dinner show. My name's Lynn and my aim, along with my guests, is to explore how our food experiences have influenced our lives as well as our waistlines. I'm also joined on the show by Michael O'Halloran for our regular feature, The Nugget of Knowledge, where we focus on a particular food topic. It could be a deep dive into a particular item of food, a trawl through the latest food news, or a discussion about a food trend. There's 9,500-year-old chickpea remains have been found in the Middle East.
Remains of chickpeas?
Yeah, I guess probably in a jar or something like that.
Found huddled together in a jar.
Yeah, maybe.
Wow.
So they've been around a long time.
Yeah, I don't suppose they were, excavating burial grounds for the chickpeas, were they? But as you say, there's probably evidence to suggest that they were, a part of the society at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're a member of the society, but people used to eat them. I don't know how much.
I don't suppose how active they would have been, in the local debates that were going on.
Yeah. Running the council, such like. And as well as discussing the delights of the humble chickpea, this episode, Michael and I are also taste testing some yummy chickpea snacks. So hang around till the end and you can hear what we think of them. My guest for this episode is an ex-Metropolitan Police officer who spent much of her career investigating child exploitation crime and working to improve the safety of young people in our communities. She retired a few years ago, but was quickly enticed back into employment by an opportunity to live and work in the Falkland Islands. Yes, you heard me correctly, the Falkland Islands, where she would work with the local police and community to review and improve child safeguarding procedures. She's living there now and is joining me direct from her home in Stanley. Helen Taylor, welcome to the What's for Dinner show.
Hello.
After 3 years of living in the Falkland Islands, what is it you miss most about the UK?
I think I miss driving faster than 40 miles an hour, which is the highest speed limit here. So I like driving, but I miss driving properly. I like it down here that there's not crowds, the people. Yeah, it's nice and quiet here. Yeah, I miss, not fighting for a parking space because you can park very easily here. I miss the sunshine though, and sitting outside eating. You can't really do that here very much. It's a bit too windy.
So what's the population of the Falkland Islands?
It fluctuates massively because you get a lot of contract workers coming down. So that obviously swells the population. And when the tourists are here, there's a lot of people sort of stay on island then to assist with all of that. So, but in the winter, a lot of people sort of head off to the UK for either work or sunshine. So it really fluctuates. But I think in the Falklands at the minute, there's just over 3,000 people, about 3,200. Most of them resident in Stanley, several hundred living out in camp, which is the sort of remote farmsteads outside of Stanley.
Wow, yeah, that is a small population, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, really small, especially when you come down from the UK with, I don't know, what is it now, 70 odd million people. And then you come here and it's like, yeah, it's really, really different.
So if you've been there for 3 years, then obviously you were there during the COVID pandemic. How did that affect your life in the Falkland Islands and your ability to sort of settle down and settle into the local community?
Yeah, it was a bit crazy really because obviously we could see the news and see this sort of developing worldwide, which was quite scary. But because there's only flights in from either South America or on the RAF flight, there's not, it's not really open to tourism sort of any other way or getting here any other way. We were quite cut off. So we managed to keep it out of the community. If anybody came down from the UK, they had to go into quarantine. And obviously being a police officer, we had to kind of police that and just make sure people weren't breaking the quarantine rules. And then when it kind of got to its height, they did sort of have a bit of a lockdown. But the good thing is here, where they let people exercise, and because there's so few people and so much space, so, people kind of, you could still go about your business and not really sort of bump into anybody or sort of cause any problems. So, they work really hard here, the medical sort of department, to keep COVID out. But yeah, it was a bit of an odd experience.
Yeah, social distancing wasn't really an issue then. Everyone is fairly distanced most of the time anyway.
Well, kind of over a couple of days, they did suddenly, everywhere had to have screens up, and there was all signs up saying 2 meter distance and that, and it was really alien, I think, for the population here, because everyone is so friendly, and everybody does know one another, and the crime rate's really low. So you don't have like the screens in the bank and the supermarket and the sort of police station. That they didn't really have all of that in place. So it was kind of really, a bit alien to suddenly have all these screens and distancing. And it was, yeah, a little bit crazy, really.
So did you experience any sort of shortages of, food or provisions during that time?
Yeah, because they have a flight which is called the LATAM flight, which comes in from South America, mainly Chile. That brings in sort of fresh fruit and vegetables. We do have a market here, like it's called Stanley Growers, which is an institution. They provide all the fruit and veg normally. But they were really stretched, obviously, because suddenly all the fresh fruit and veg that was supplemented, came in on the aeroplane. That dropped off because the plane wasn't allowed in. So suddenly there was a dearth of sort of fresh fruit and vegetables.
So, well, during that period anyway, did you cook a lot at home, or I mean, were the sort of restaurants and cafes still operating in Stanley?
No, because a lot of them had to shut down because of the sort of restrictions. I mean, there aren't a great many restaurants and cafes here. There are a few, but most of them took the opportunity, I think, actually to shut down and like refurbish or something like that. Because people weren't going out socialising, wasn't worth their while sort of staying open. Yeah, it had an impact on that.
Right.
But no, I didn't take the opportunity. I'm not a great cook at home, so it didn't really change much.
So what were your sort of pandemic meals? What do they consist of?
Oh Lord, just the usual, I suppose. I'm quite limited in my repertoire, so I can't blame it all on the lack of supplies. To be honest, I can make a leek risotto, and yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. We
That's
could
it.
just stop the interview now because that is it. Leek risotto. Where do I go from that? Spaghetti bolognese. I can do a chili. Just to be honest, I'm not a very good cook, so it's kind of just the staples. Yeah, you've got the wrong person on the show if you want me to list a load of recipes I'll be knocked up.
No. I was intrigued really as to the sorts of things that you might be sort of cooking up. So you live with your partner, and so is that their responsibility then, the cooking, or do you just sort of muddle along together?
We muddle along together. We kind of play chicken, I think. Whoever's hungriest has to do the cooking because neither of us are. We can cook, but we don't really enjoy it. We're not foodies
Yeah.
in that respect. I like food. I like eating it, but I like being served it. I'm not a great cook. I find it a bit of a fuss. But no, I'm not. I'm not blessed with that. Being able to throw everything in a pan and something come out. My house looks like it's been burgled. If I have to do any cooking, there's bits everywhere, and every pan is out the cupboard. And no, we both sort of look at one another and sort of hope that the other one comes up with some inspiration for
Yeah,
for the night's dinner.
So now we have to eat, otherwise we might die. As promised, I'm going to give a shout out, a big hello to a few people who shared my podcast or my social media posts. So hello to Maggie Woodbridge, to Sophie Lazelle, and also to my previous guests, Michelle Beck and Becky Wright, for continuing to support the podcast. So I was going to ask you whether you use cookbooks or cooking shows to sort of give you any inspiration. Do any of those sorts of things help you along the way?
No, to be honest, I've got some nice cookbooks, but purely because they look nice in my kitchen, for no other reason. Some of them are well thumbed, but only on certain recipes. You can sort of like hold the spine, and the book will open at sort of certain recipes that are just staples. And the only cooking show I ever watch is the Great British Bake Off, and that's purely because we have a wonderful sweepstake here where everyone draws a name out. This wasn't my idea, by the way, but one of the women I work with came up with this. We all draw a name out, and the week that your person goes out of the Great British Bake Off, you then have to bake something for everyone else in the sweepstake. And it has to be in the theme of that week. So you just hope that you go
Yikes.
out in like biscuit week or bread week,
Yeah.
and not something like Japanese week or
Yeah.
so the
Oh my goodness, the
showstopper week or whatever
showstopper
they
week,
are.
I
Yeah.
know, or something made out of
So
jelly or something. Yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, that's an excellent idea.
yeah,
Excellent idea. So, which ones have
yeah.
you had to deliver on?
I did. The last one was. I know I went out on bread week and I made sweetbread. I made sticky fingered, iced
Oh yeah,
buns.
lovely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they're supposed to be lovely, aren't they? But everyone's still alive who had one, so
So,
that's a win for me.
yeah.
But
Uh,
and I can't remember what the first year was. I put it out of my
yeah,
memory.
that's right. Yeah,
Traumatic.
maybe everybody else has as well. Hey, Helen.
Yeah,
But still, a
yeah,
nice bun. I
yeah.
mean, perfect, because as long as you put a sufficient thickness of icing on the top, you can kind of get away with anything, can't you?
That was my theory
Yeah,
entirely.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier that there's not that many places to eat in Stanley. I did do a little Google. I hope this place actually exists, but it mentioned somewhere called the Waterfront Kitchen Cafe. Is that somewhere that's
Oh
familiar?
yes, yeah.
Well, that's rated number 1 on TripAdvisor.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah. To be honest, there's a few little places, and but yeah, no, I can recommend the waterfront is lovely, but there are other places available in
Yeah.
Stanley.
So you've probably eaten in the mall.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah.
So any particular memorable meals?
I must admit that the waterfront does a marvelous New York strip steak where you
Ooh.
get steak and randomly on an egg on it, but
Oh yeah.
it works. It works for me. So that's that's really lovely. And I have to mention the Malvina Hotel that does. I'm not a great fish eater, but they do Patagonian toothfish sort of fillets, and I had a nice meal there once at the Malvina. So that's the sort of the name of the hotel. So
Right.
that was nice. And I got to put it out there that the Stanley Arms does the best pizza in the world.
In the
I'm just putting it
world.
out there.
Right, good,
Best
good.
pizza in the world. Yes, I'm saying that.
Coming up, Helen and I recall domestic science lessons and ponder the challenges of healthy eating when working shifts. If you're enjoying the What's for Dinner show, remember to also check out my previous episodes, such as the one where I talked to Instagrammer Maddie Dampier.
What's kind of funny, and I bet if my mum is listening to the podcast, she'd be giggling right now, is that when I was younger, I would only eat baked beans, and the fact that if you have a look on Melon's meals, there's so much vegetables, exotic ingredients, like so much colour, and the fact that that all came from a little girl that would only eat baked beans is quite something, really.
So am I right in thinking that
Yeah.
you're returning to the UK this coming autumn?
Yes, not long now, and I shall be heading back to the UK. Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of food then, what will be the first thing you reach for on the supermarket shelves that you've missed out on?
I think probably an avocado. You play a bit of a lottery here with the avocados. It's a bit hit and miss. Just to get a fresh one of those would be very nice. Stanley growers here do a wonderful job, really. Keeping everyone topped up with fruit and veg through the year in some really trying conditions. Weather conditions. It's amazing. But I think the thing I miss most is good old Devon pasty.
Devon pasty or a Cornish pasty?
Well, controversial, isn't it? I'm from Devon,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I have to say a Devon pasty, but I know what you mean.
Yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
let the Cornish have some credit for them. Yeah.
So I think now, Helen, is probably a good time to reveal that we both grew up in the same town, which is the lovely Brixham in South Devon.
We did.
I've got quite strong memory of sitting in your bedroom surrounded by football posters and you telling me about various players. Am I right in thinking it was Liverpool that was your team?
Well, obviously, Torquay United was the
They came first
but,
in everyone's heart.
Torquay United and Liverpool, and they both sort of stuck with me throughout thick and thin, really. So yeah.
So I was looking at Liverpool's cup winning history and trying to sort of search out when Kevin Keegan was playing for them. So I think we're talking sort of 75, that kind of era when Liverpool was sort of, at their peak.
Yeah, I think so. 70, certainly 77, wasn't it? 75, 76, 77. Yeah, it would have been around then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to reveal our age
No,
now,
I'm
aren't
not
we?
going to. I'm not going to. We were tiny then. We were like babes in arms.
Yeah.
I was also remembering that you were allowed to play football with the boys during PE lessons. And in the light of the kind of recent successes of the women's football team, it kind of made me think how, if my memory is correct, that was actually quite a radical move by the school at the time.
Yeah, it was actually at the primary school, and it was funny. I was having this conversation with my parents just recently because I kind of I did thank them because I still treasure. They bought me a Liverpool football shirt, which was a big thing, back then for sort of girls to, have a like proper football shirt. Yeah, I did play at primary school, so when I did sort of play, they accepted it, and like I say, probably a shout out that the school did help me, because I've played for many years. I've retired now gracefully, but I played for many years, and the school did support me in in those times. So yeah. In fact, I played in the five-a-side here the couple of months ago, actually, for the police team here in Stanley. So, and I scored. You'll be pleased to know.
Good.
So I haven't let my standards drop.
So, how would you describe, the food that you ate growing up?
Oh, it was really, I was blessed, really. My mum and dad, they, really good home cooking. Mum and dad had a bed and breakfast, so there was always plenty of food at all times to sort of feed the guests and, feed me if I was hungry. So Friday night was the one night we were allowed a sort of TV dinner, as mum would call it. And we were allowed sort of, I don't know, crispy pancakes and things like that, which, I saw it as a treat, but my mum just thought they were, laden with salt and they weren't good for us, but they were a treat and it wouldn't kill us. So we were allowed to have it.
Absolutely. So you're talking about the Findus crispy pancake.
Oh, is there any others?
In my a little image has popped up in my mind of like something that's a sort of a half circle shaped, kind of crimped around the edges, bit like a pasty, Helen.
So I think there's something going on there.
It's a throwback.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, they were entirely that, weren't they? Yeah, They were just like a pancake, sort of in half with breadcrumbs, and then a sort of like, I don't know, chicken bacon or something filling. You're making me feel hungry now just talking about it.
So did your mum sort of try to encourage you to cook or teach you any of her sort of cooking skills? Were you interested in that when you were younger?
No. She has tried throughout her life, and my mum's still going strong. And even now, I will, be talking to her, and then I'll say like, "Oh, I had a really nice." Beef stroganoff in the restaurant the other day or something. And she'll go, "Oh, well, it's really easy to cook." And then she'll proceed to tell me how to cook it. And I'm like, "Mum, don't waste your time." Yeah, she still thinks I can make a pie and pastry at the drop of a hat, but I can't. So yeah. She's never going to give up though, bless her.
No, absolutely, yeah. So, of course, this brings us to domestic science lessons. So I feel like you should know how to make pastry because we must have learnt that in domestic science classes, Helen.
All I remember is that our teacher sat and watched Wimbledon while we were given. Do you remember that? She would watch Wimbledon while we were given a task to make a skirt, or we were had to do cooking or whatever it was, because one term was sort of cooking and one term was sewing or something, wasn't it? And I think I was still making a cake when everyone else was making the skirt, and I was still making the skirt when everyone else was making the cake. I did to this day wake up in a cold sweat about kedgeree and things like that. So yeah, crazy times.
I know I was mortified when I didn't pass my domestic science O-level, which was very annoying.
Oh, did you not?
No, I made some kind of ridiculous error on choosing the wrong ingredient or something. It didn't fit the criteria of the question. But the sewing side of things for me was always an absolute disaster. And as you know, my father is a tailor. So I was always quite a big disappointment in that regard. although he did get so annoyed with me all the time that he would just sew the skirt for me. So I probably had top marks in the sewing side of things, but none of it was me.
Is there an admission there then?
Yeah.
Is there an admission there then that none of that? And I always used to think after all these years that you were a genius at making things.
No. I mean, you must have left home at 16 then, did you, to go and train as a police officer?
God, yeah, doing the maths now. Yeah, so I was 18. Yeah, I went, I joined the police cadets and then, joined the police straight after that. So I did my A-levels locally at South Devon Technical College. And then I went from there, I joined the police cadets. And then that was up in the Metropolitan Police. And then I just joined the Metropolitan Police after that to see if I liked it. And then, stayed up there.
And so did you find combining that kind of training and work with cooking your own meals for the first time and being away from home?
Yeah, so for the year I was a police cadet, you got given all your meals. Then when I went to, I started out at Hackney Police Station in East London, and we lived in what was called a section house, which was kind of like a hotel sort of hostel for police officers. But they had a canteen there. So you just ate in the canteen. You didn't cook any of your own food. And there was a canteen at the police station. So you'd eat at the police station. Good portions, I remember, lots of chips, things like that. And they were really, really lovely, the cooks. They would, if they knew you were coming back late to the section house, things like that, they'd leave a meal out for you to heat up and things like that. So, it probably wasn't the most balanced diet because you'd kind of eat it at all odd hours. Do you know what I mean? So when you're working shifts, that's the worst thing. You come back in and you'd eat a meal and then you'd be tired, like you'd go to sleep after just eating a big dinner or, trying to get something to eat in the early hours of the morning. There was never, in those days, there wasn't the 24-hour supermarkets available now where you can get something quite healthy. Sort of a few kebab shops, etc. open.
Yeah, that's it. A dodgy kebab shop on Hackney High Street on your way home.
So yeah. Well, there were some dodgy ones and there were some good ones, and you knew which ones to go to. But God, I dread to think, what calories I ate and what rubbish I ate in those days.
Yeah. So in your experience, then, that kind of working pattern isn't really conducive to a sort of a healthy diet.
Like I say, certainly not back then, because if you were organised or you sort of if people lived at home, etc., they could bring a packed lunch in, etc. But the rest of us, we would have to, buy something, and it wasn't that healthy. And also you're just eating at all the wrong times, and then you're going home and sleeping, and it's not a healthy lifestyle, to be honest.
I suppose it must have had an effect on your attitude to food. So do you blame that on sort of the fact that you're not that into cooking now?
I would love to blame it on that. And then I've worked with some people though who are genius cooks and absolutely love it. So I don't know, they work the same shifts and have done for a while. So I do feel that I can't actually lay the blame entirely on shift work. But looking back now, I think I've eaten some rubbish, during my sort of, those years.
Would you describe yourself as a dieter at any point in your life, where you've sort of tried to lose weight or sort of change the way that you've been eating?
No, not really. I do remember that the whole of the station I worked at the time went on that. Do you remember there was that cabbage soup and potato diet? Hideous. But the whole station, or certainly my shift, did it for a week or what have you. And apart from a dreadful smell around the station, I don't think anyone lost any weight. To be honest, I think that's probably the only diet I've ever been on, and that was because there was a group of us doing it. I can't stick to diet.
So do you worry about your health?
Well, no, touch wood, I am healthy. I'm quite good at eating my, fruit and vegetables. I am aware of the science behind it and what I should be eating. So there are occasions when I eat well and I do try and keep to that. But I am a snacker. There's no getting away from it. I get a little bit of a salt craving and I'm like, oh, I've got to have some peanuts. I know I should lose some weight, but I kind of just fortunate that I don't have any sort of health issues. Yeah, I kind of, I'm a great believer in, everything sort of in moderation. A little bit of what you fancy and things like that is quite healthy. I'm just a stereotypical detective. I do have a sort of like drawer full of snacks, so just, because you never know where you're going to have to work through the night, and there's nothing worse than not having any snacks about if you're stuck at the station, so yeah, I've learned that.
Okay, well, thank you, Helen. It's been lovely chatting to you. Now it's time for Nugget of Knowledge. I'm joined by my co-host, Michael O'Halloran, partner in crime, so to speak, And for this episode, our topic is chickpeas. We talked in a previous episode, Michael, about how much we loved a chickpea. If you remember, they were part of Madeline's Meals Tuscan artichoke salad that I made and you taste tested on the show, when Maddie was the guest.
I sure do. Yeah, it tasted great.
So I thought we'd take a closer look at this humble ingredient.
Yeah, I've been eating chickpeas for longer than I care to remember now, so it'd be nice to learn a little bit more about them.
There's two main varieties of chickpeas. One is a larger, round, light-coloured one called, I think it's called a kabuli.
Kabuli, that's the one I think most people will be familiar with, I guess, is it?
I think so, yeah. It's common in America and in Europe. But there's also a smaller, dark, irregularly shaped DC type, which is more common in India and the Middle East, apparently.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure I've had them then.
Well, I guess we may have had them, but we might not have
Realised.
recognised them.
Yeah,
Maybe when we were in
Okay.
India. So yeah, two types, Desai and Kabuli. The Desai one has more of a rough kind of coat, whereas, as you say, the Kabuli is a smoother skinned item.
Classic chickpea.
Classic chickpea. It's a key ingredient in Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisine, of course, used probably most popularly in hummus. And also in falafel, which I think is made from a chickpea flour. And in Spain, do you know what they're called in Spain?
No, I've no idea.
No, they're called garbanzo, or the garbanzo bean in Spain.
Okay.
I do hope I'm pronouncing these things correctly, but anyway,
Well,
garbanzo.
you've probably got the Z wrong, no doubt.
Oh, do you think so? Is Z said differently in Spanish then?
Probably.
Who knows? I don't know. And obviously it's important in Indian cuisine. You know, you have chana masala, it's used in curries and soups. And when it's ground to flour, in India it's known as gram flour. And so we've had that whenever I've made cauliflower pakoras or Indian bhajis. India is the biggest producer of chickpeas worldwide. 70%. It's one of the earliest cultivated legumes, and we'll come on to legumes in a minute. There's 9,500-year-old chickpea remains have been found in the Middle East.
Remains of chickpeas.
Yeah, I guess probably in a jar or something like that.
Found huddled together in a jar.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. One of the oldest references to chickpeas appear in early recordings. I don't know what that means. Maybe it means wall paintings or whatever they call them, wall art, cave art, in Turkey about 3,500 BC, and in France about 6,000 BC.
Wow.
So they've been around a long time.
Yeah, I don't suppose they were, excavating burial grounds for the chickpeas, were they? But as you say, there's probably evidence to suggest that they were, a part of the society at that point, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure they were a member of the society, but people used to eat them. I don't know how much the chickpea...
how active they would have been in the local debates.
I don't know,
on,
running the council and such like. Chickpeas, so obviously they're called chickpeas. Some people might refer to them as a bean, and other people refer to them as legumes.
I've never met anyone who refers to them as a legume.
Well, you're not mixing in the right circles of foodie
right.
people. Well, I don't know. Maybe legumes is a new word, not a new word, but a sort of a word that's become more used nowadays.
Yeah, I'm a more kind of a bean sort of guy, I reckon.
Yeah, peas and beans.
Yeah.
Well, I've always been a bit confused about the difference between legumes, pulses, beans and peas.
Go on then, tell me.
So I had a little dig around on the internet. So a legume is a plant. Apparently there's over 20,000 different legume species, and they are a nutritious staple of diets around the world. So that's the plant form. They then tend to have pods and beans and peas and things like that, and that would be technically the pulse is the edible seed of a legume plant.
Okay, so in the case of a chickpea, that's the pulse?
Yeah, so that would be the edible part of the chickpea
legume.
Yeah, so a legume refers to the plant and would include its leaves, stems and pods. The plants produce edible seeds that are called pulses. Pulses include beans, lentils and peas.
Okay. That makes sense.
Does that make sense now? So
Okay,
that's cleared that one up, hopefully. They are a nutritious staple in diets, everywhere, all around the world. An inexpensive source of protein, vitamins, complex carbohydrates and fibre.
Right.
So they're a pretty good
all-rounder,
yeah, for the diet. And I guess as we've started to eat more of these things, I guess that's where the word legume has come into play, as we become more sophisticated about what we understand about this type of plant.
Or maybe it's just that restaurants prefer to describe them in a bit more eloquent language.
Maybe. So maybe it's elitism.
Yes.
Possibly.
Would you like legumes with that, sir?
Legumes instead of just peas. The entire legume plant, I guess, minus the edible bits that they can sell, are often used in agricultural applications. So,
I see. So
livestock
animal
feed,
right, okay.
things like that. Or as cover crops, which I think must mean, when they are, growing something.
Undercover.
I don't know. I'm losing track of what.
Trade?
I don't know what I'm talking about now, so I'm going to move on. One thing that I was intrigued by, and I thought you might be interested in, is that you can use chickpeas as a coffee substitute. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
Not convinced?
No. There's a reason why coffee is so popular and not chickpeas. As a drink.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's intriguing because if you don't want to have caffeine in your coffee, then obviously you can buy decaffeinated coffee nowadays. Yeah. But you could also make decaffeinated coffee out of chickpeas, and apparently it's very nice.
Really?
There's a brand called Back to Nature. They do a chickpea coffee substitute powder, and they've been used as a caffeine-free alternative to coffee for centuries.
Wow, I've never heard that.
Yeah, I know. I'd never heard it either, really. Generally, I think it's when a country or a community fall on hard times and they can't afford or can't find coffee. Chickpea coffee is cut into coffee to make it go further.
There's a theme emerging here.
There is a bit, isn't there?
The chickpea is cut into the coffee.
Yeah.
It acts as a cover.
Well, coffee is a drug, so, I'm using the right terminology, I think.
Yeah.
And if they can't get hold of coffee at all, then it's a substance that can, scratch the itch of wanting to have a cup of coffee.
Right, okay, but never quite,
Yeah, probably like having any decaf, I imagine.
Yeah,
I don't know, I've never had decaf, and I've only recently got into coffee, so I'm not a good person to be talking about that. There's an article from a few years ago now, but in the Miami Times, May 2011, saying that one example of this happening is in Cuba. So the state produced coffee was cut with roasted chickpea beans, ground down into a sort of a powder to make it last longer and meet demand.
Right.
And then apparently in 2005, you could pretty much only get pure chickpea coffee. So people mix it with various kinds of milk, sugar, flavourings, like cinnamon and so on and so forth to make it more palatable. But yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting.
Well, we'll have to try it.
Will you? Good luck.
Yeah. Well, next time we fall on hard times.
Yeah.
Could be sooner than
I'll
you
just
think.
go back to cups of tea, I think. The other intriguing thing about chickpeas is the liquid that you get chickpeas in. So when you open the can of chickpeas and you put them in the sieve to drain them off, the liquid is actually a really good egg substitute. So people who are vegans, they are probably very familiar with using it in cooking. It's called aquafaba.
Sounds like a...
Yeah, it's a sort of sounds like a what?
Pretty trendy offer.
It sounds like a sprouting...
Some aquafaba.
A sprouting bean or something. One of those future foods that we've discussed before.
Yeah.
But it's quite a thick liquid containing a mix of starch and just really trace amounts of protein. But it's got like a sort of binding and thickening property.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can use it instead of eggs in a cake, in cookies, and also in meringues and mayonnaise. So in the spirit of kind of not wanting to waste food, then it might be worth holding on to it and making a meringue, although I'm rubbish at making meringues. So
Yeah, so we'd find it probably tucked away in the fridge 6 months later.
yeah, probably with a bit of mould on the top.
Yeah.
So basically 1 tablespoon of aquafaba equals 1 egg yolk. 2 tablespoons equals 1 egg white. And therefore 3 tablespoons equals
Not a real egg.
a whole egg.
Wow.
The Vegan Society website also flags up chocolate mousse and ice cream as other things you could do with aquafaba. And my favourite little tip, which I will be trying, is if you make a cocktail and it needs to have a sort of fluffy egg top on it, you can use aquafaba instead.
Oh, right, okay.
Which is ideal because you only use the egg white when you do one of those cocktails, and then you're left with the egg yolk.
Yeah, it's a waste really.
It's a bit of can be a waste.
Yeah. Wow, aquafaba, it'll change your life.
It will. Yeah, definitely. Shall we run through the nutritional benefits just quickly again?
Go on then.
So, excellent source of carbohydrate, protein, fibre, B vitamins and minerals. They have a very low glycemic index, which means that they are very useful for people who are diabetic. They prevent sudden surges in blood sugar level and insulin levels. So help control blood sugar. Excellent for gut flora. They contain a soluble fibre, which is fermented in the colon and becomes bifidobacterium. That's an all-round good thing. Cool. So that's good. And obesity. Now chickpeas help to promote a feeling of fullness.
So again, you can help.
So in that sense, they can help.
Control
with weight control and dieting. Tra-la.
So it's great, but also just tastes good.
They do taste good, and in a minute we're going to taste test.
Are we?
Some chickpeas, but first of all, let's just have a little. In fact, no, let's do that now.
Okay. No, I didn't. This is a surprise, actually.
So what we've got here, Michael, are 4 different types or 4 different varieties of chickpea snack. They're made by a company called Brave, and I bought them in a well-known supermarket.
I haven't seen these before. So
no.
They're relatively new on the scene.
They might be. They were in the sort of vegan-y kind of corner of the vegan corner of the supermarket.
It's a bit disparaging.
It is a bit disparaging, but that where they have all the sort of more innovative.
It's been there for 9,000 years.
Yeah, more innovative products, but haven't been existing for 9,000 years, covered in dark chocolate.
No, which looks interesting.
So we've got 4 to taste test here. We're going to do we're going to do savoury first, I think.
Okay, yeah.
So first of all, have a taste of that one and tell me what you think.
So what's this?
Well, you taste it and see if you can guess what it is.
It's kind of smoky.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
It doesn't taste like a chickpea, to be honest.
It doesn't actually.
It tastes more like a kind of not a crisp, but that kind of product.
It's kind of
be a nice snack with a chilled beer.
Yeah, it's absolutely. A bit. It's like a halfway between a crisp and a breadstick.
Yeah. So I can see myself.
Yeah, give them back.
No, I can see myself tucking into them with a nice.
Put them down.
Beer.
You've got 3 different
hot weather.
3 different flavours to try. So that one is smoky barbecue. 132 calories per portion.
What's the portion?
Well, it's probably not enough, I'd imagine. 30 grams, I suspect, although I can't read it upside down on the packet.
Right, okay.
7 grams of protein, 5 grams of fibre. So, yeah, pretty tasty. Try the next one. What's the taste like?
Yeah, that's your classic kind of salted crisp, is it?
Yeah, they're just a plain sea salt. I think I prefer the barbecue.
Both, actually. I do like both. I think they would work a treat as a bar snack.
Out of those 2, I prefer the smoky barbecue. That'd be mine.
Right, I could go with either.
You go with either. Okay, so that's the savoury. What about the sweet ones?
Okay.
So try that one.
So this is obviously chocolate.
No?
Yeah, I don't feel as if I'm being very helpful because it's a chocolate covered chickpea, and I could.
You could eat those.
I could eat those as well.
Well, this is all good. Let me try.
It's nice and crunchy, actually.
Yeah.
They're crunchier than the savoury alternative, I would say. They're good though.
Quite nice.
They are good.
You could also have those on ice cream.
Yeah, that'd be nice actually.
As like a topping.
Yeah, we've got some ice cream.
We have. See,
Yeah.
now I could eat those. They're lovely.
Yeah.
And weirdly, they've got less calories than the other two.
Really?
Not a lot. 129 calories per portion. Whereas the
Okay.
other two are 132 and 136.
Okay. Yeah, you wouldn't think that, would you?
Be the-
And it's dark chocolate, of course, and we all know dark chocolate's good for you.
Well, that's what they say. Okay, what about this one? This
Okay,
is the
so
last one.
What have we got here?
So
Again,
the
there's a chocolatey one.
Yeah, two different colours, so try one of each.
That's it feels like more of a milk chocolate, and then a white chocolate,
You think?
which is again a bit sweeter.
Oh, good.
These are all good.
Well, these are called cookies and cream,
Ah, okay.
and one is
They
white chocolate.
are really good snack food.
They are
like,
good
yeah.
snack foods.
And let's face it, they're probably not healthy, but they're less bad for you than a bag of crisps, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess so. I think they'd be more filling than a bag of crisps.
Yeah.
The only downside, they weren't cheap.
Ah, okay.
So I would say that they were about £2.40 for a pack.
Oh, that's a lot.
It's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. So they need to improve on that somehow.
But then maybe, if more people ate them, then they would the price would come down.
Yeah. So that feels like a bit of a luxury snack then.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just looking at the back of the packet here. The chocolate one, so let's look at the dark chocolate one. 65% less sugar than a chocolate bar. 4 grams of gut-loving fibre.
Right.
And stay fuller for longer. So they are,
Yeah.
promoting it. So yeah, only for the more well-off amongst us.
Yeah. And, it's just not something that you'd be buying regularly, is it really, at that price?
No, because I think you could easily woof your way through one bag.
Yeah, relatively quickly.
Yeah. And even though crisps have gone up, they're twice the price.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you need to eat half as many.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, good. Thank you
But-
for tasting those, Michael.
Yeah, no, I'll carry on with
We're
that
impressed.
if you don't mind.
But they're a bit expensive.
Yeah.
So last but not least, I just was going to run through some other uses of hummus. Of chickpeas, obviously in hummus. Making your own hummus is so easy. I think more people should do it. It's got to be better than the stuff you buy in the supermarket ready-made, which can be a
Yeah.
bit sloppy and a bit bleh, can't it? And I also like Jamie Oliver's smashed chickpeas recipe, which doesn't need tahini. And I've also tried making Otto Lengi's hummus from a book that he has called The Test Kitchen, which was a bit of a faff, although probably worth it. He wants you to remove the thin skin that surrounds the chickpea.
I bet that's a good job.
Yeah, but it does give you a much smoother
Right. Okay.
hummus. So it did taste lovely, but yeah, a bit of a faff. You had to sort of tip the chickpeas onto a dry tea towel and then put another tea towel on top and kind of rub them together. And then the skins kind of fall off. But obviously you've got to pick them all off, really.
Right. Yeah. That's you've got to have a lot of time on your hands for that.
Yeah, and be a perfectionist. So other things we've had chickpeas with, chicken and chickpea tagine, falafels we've mentioned, chana dal we've mentioned, cauliflower and chickpea curry we've had
That's a good
before.
one.
The Italians use chickpeas in pasta dishes. So the Italian word for chickpea is
Ceci.
ceci, thank you.